So Jordan, last week you had me shooting on the iPhone, and now you're going to shoot anamorphic? I mean, what's going on?
Look, we've been doing this together for a long time. I think it's really important that I try new things to keep things interesting.
Well, like, you're bored of the videos or you're bored of me? Welcome back to TV viewers. It is Chris Nichols here, and we've got a fun lens to play with today. I've got myself a brand new Sony FE 70-200 2.8 version 2 G Master, and I'm particularly excited because frankly, Sony's first two professional G Master zooms, the 24-70 and 70-200 first versions, were okay but not great. They were fairly lacking in a lot of ways. And then the competition got fierce because Panasonic, Canon, Nikon, they updated their 70-200 2.8s. They were very good lenses, definitely sharper. We did a video comparing all of the 70-200 2.8s, and unfortunately Sony was found to be lacking in a lot of regards. So, does this new lens address those issues? Let's go find out. Now, as far as the size of the lens goes, it's very similar to the older 70-200 2.8 G Master, but it is way lighter. So this is just over half a noct, and that's a big deal. It's about 30% lighter than the old 70-200 2.8. You really do notice the difference. In fact, it's actually slightly lighter than the ultra compact Canon 70-200 2.8 for their RF lens mount. Now, otherwise handling is very similar. I mean, it's rugged and weather sealed like a G Master, feels very similar with its focus ring and zoom ring, but we do now have an aperture ring here. I can lock it in the auto setting with the iris lock switch here and then just use my control dials, but I can also then click it out and then use whatever aperture I want on the ring. And of course I got a declicker, so if I want that to be silent and smooth, I can do that as well. So once again, in typical Jordan fashion, he has positioned me precariously on a downward slope, but he's also hid his crime today by using a telephoto anamorphic. So if I fall down, you'll know what happened, but I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about the lens collar here on the 70-200. So they've ported it. They've removed quite a bit of material actually throughout this to reduce weight, I assume. It's also nice because I can put my thumb into that hole and it's very comfortable when I'm walking around. I don't feel like I'm going to drop it like I do sometimes with other tripod collars. It is very compact, very small, and it's removable, but unfortunately it's not cut for Arca Swiss type tripod heads, which means I'm gonna have to put a plate on here anyways if I'm gonna use it with a tripod, which then adds weight anyways. Now, I'm happy to report that when it comes to flare, the new 70-200 responds very well. Still maintains good contrast even when you're shooting into the sun, and you can see here in this example, slight ghosting, but it's pretty well controlled. All right, let's talk about bokeh next on the 70-200. This is a lens you're going to shoot wide open a lot for portraits and such. And of course, its telephoto nature gives it nice, shallow depth of field. I shot most of my samples here at 200 millimeters just to really see the most dramatic effect. And if we take a look first wide open, you can see here our background highlights, a little bit of cat's eye creeping towards the center. Not bad. When we go to f4, you can see now the cat's eye is reducing a little bit. I do like that the bokeh still stands nice and round because of that 11-bladed aperture. So we're not getting that polygonal effect. Now, of course, we're just talking about the background specular highlights so far, and that's not always the big picture, so to speak. Things that are slightly out of focus have a kind of nervous blur to them, and I wouldn't say that the transition is especially smooth or buttery. It's kind of got a frenetic nature to it. Not bad, but I would just keep that in mind. Now, one thing that the original 70-200 G Master did very well was focus quickly. In fact, it was the fastest out of our tests. Now we have an even faster focusing system here. We've got 4 linear XD motors in here, and when I'm just doing single point focus from minimum distance to infinity, it's snappy, very quick going in either direction. So overall, very impressive. But another thing that I really wanted to test was how it would handle focusing while zooming. You see, first off, Jordan is a world-class sprinter, and yet I know that the older 70-200 and this 70-200 with the Sony A1 body I'm using can handle a classic running test, keeping a hit rate on Jordan incredibly high as he runs towards the camera. But If I constantly zoom the whole time, I can keep his body and face roughly the same size as he approaches towards me. It's a neat thing and very difficult for a lens to do. And yet, as you can see here in the samples, our hit rate is excellent. And despite his incredibly fast speed, incredibly powerful long legs, it was still able to keep up with the action. Now, we wanted to test the breathing characteristics of this new lens because the older G Master, it did have a little bit of breathing. We talked about that in our comparison video. And here it is improved. And we've tested both at 70mm and 200mm. You can see here at 70mm, it breathes a little bit more. When we go to 200mm, it's a little bit better controlled. But overall, it's pretty good for breathing. You can see the frame edges moving just a little bit there, but it is definitely an improvement over the older G Master. And of course, longitudinal chromatic aberration is something we want to test as well. The Bokeh, to see if there's those color fringes in the foreground and background out of focus areas. Now, the original G Master basically had no Bokeh. It controlled it very well. I'm happy to say, of course, this lens also totally clean, no Bokeh to worry about. And that's nice because then you don't have to worry about it in post. Well, let's talk about sharpness next, because on the original 70-200, this was really its main weakness. And I don't have one to test for our test charts, but you can see samples in our older video where we compare the 70-200s. And I'm gonna say right off the bat, the new 70-200 G Master 2.8 is definitely sharper. You can see it right away. But let's have a look at our specific shots here. So first, it's 70mm, shooting wide open, 2.8 in the centers. You can actually see sharpness is already very good. And actually the corners, when we look there, they still hold up okay. They definitely improved though when we stopped down to f5.6. I didn't notice much improvement in the center. It was already really good wide open. The corners do tighten up a bit. Now let's look at 200mm. Now Sony does say the 200mm lens range is sharper than 70, but again, I'm not noticing much difference. Wide open in the center, already excellent. Looking here in the corners of 2.8, what I do notice is a little bit of barrel distortion, but nothing that wouldn't easily be corrected. Now we stop down to 5.6. You can see the center here is already excellent. No real improvement. We go to the corners, they do tighten up a bit as well. But overall, I would say the 70-200 2.8 G Master second version is a much sharper lens all around and very versatile because of it. So I think we finally have the 70-200 2.8 Sony G Master that we always wanted. I mean, this thing improves so much. It is definitely lighter weight, very fast focusing, very sharp. It also stands up very competitively against Nikon, Canon, and Panasonic 70-200s. Should you buy this lens? I mean, it is an expensive lens. If you haven't gotten a 70-200 yet for your Sony system, I think this is a great way to go. If you do want to save some cash and stay on a budget, I honestly don't think the original G Master is the way to go. I would probably look at something like the Tamron 70-180 as well to save some money. But if you can swing it, I think this lens does really improve so much for you. So a very fun lens to play with today, but it also gets me excited for another reason, because it brings hope that maybe Sony will now look at replacing the G Master 2470. That does need a lot of work as well. So of course, subscribe so that you don't miss when that does finally happen. I think it's gotta happen eventually. And do like our channel, leave your comments below, check out our sample gallery at dpreview.com. Link is in the description below. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon for another episode of DP Review TV.